grab a joystick and select your favorite member of the Simpsons family. Well, unless that's Maggie or Grandpa, as we embark on a mission to beat up various villains, bears, and anthropomorphic bowling balls, and maybe incite a little moral panic along the way, all throughout the town of Springfield, because today we play the Simpsons Arcade Game. Welcome in to episode 2 of Lee Carvalho's Podding Challenge, a Simpsons gaming podcast that looks at the highs and lows of the Simpsons tie-in video games. I'm one of your hosts, Tommy.
Look out, world. I'm your other host, Derek.
He's coming right at you. Actually, I don't remember what the line is that comes after that, if there is something specific.
It's Marge. One of the things that Marge says when she gets power-ups and stuff. Yeah.
Oh, I should have known that.
I mean, if you play it in the arcade, you don't hear anybody say anything because you don't hear any music or sound. I only remember that because I watched a Let's Play of it too. But yeah.
Well, that's perfect setup because today we are here to talk about one of, if not the most beloved of Simpsons games, the 1991 classic Simpsons Arcade Game. We're looking to answer the question, actually 2 questions. Is this actually one of the best Simpsons tie-in games ever made, or does nostalgia have us wearing CRT scanline tinted glasses? That's the one question. The second question, is this game worth contracting the flu over? Because that's what I did.
The things you do for podcasting.
The things you do for podcasting, right? Literally, the evening after we did this, came down with the flu. But I'm feeling better now. Also, in case anybody is like, why do you sound nasally? That's why. I'm also always just super conscious of that, so I have to just throw it out there to begin with.
I was there too, and I turned out fine, so maybe it wasn't the arcade's fault at all.
Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was the meat apocalypse that we had right before that.
I've had that too.
That's true.
I've had the exact same experience.
You're right. You're totally right. But anyway, I think this is... So... One of the things, obviously, that we were going to be doing is we're going to be talking about the Simpsons Arcade Game and our experience with it recently, as well as just our overall thoughts on it. But before we do any of that, I thought it would be prudent to talk a little bit about the history of arcades, just because, one, it's, as I was doing research, found it was super interesting. And then also our familiarity, or even possibly lack thereof, with them ourselves, like whatever our experience is with arcades. So why don't we start there? Derek. Mm-hmm. Do you have any particular history with arcades? Did you go to them when you were younger, or are you catching the new wave now as barcades are kind of making their comeback? Not really comeback, but kind of being introduced.
Yeah. I don't really have anything interesting to contribute to this side of the conversation. I really don't have much of a history with arcades. I mean, there weren't really. We grew up in the same place. I feel like the closest arcade to us, to where we actually lived, would have just been like Virginia Center Commons, right? Like, yeah. And that, I think so. Where we grew up, that would have been like, 20 to 30 minute drive. So like my parents aren't going to drive me there to play some video games. They'd just be like, we have the old Atari and Nintendo, like just play your video games on that. Right. Yeah. So the only times I ever dabbled in video game stuff really would be if I was just like at a movie theater and we were there early, and so there would be a couple of arcade games there, but even then it's not like the same experience as like going to an actual arcade. And if I was going to the mall, it was usually for a particular reason, like it wasn't like I wasn't going there to hang out at the arcade. And when I got into high school, I don't feel like any of my friends were really that big into going out to arcades either. So like I played them every so often, or if I was at like a get together or something, but it was just, I just never had a reason to really cross paths with them very often. I do like barcades a lot now, and I still have nostalgia for them just from the little bit that I would play them. And I do think the aesthetic of them and everything obviously is like, it just, it feels like a sort of throwbacky retro thing, whether you were an intense arcade gamer or not, and that's always really fun.
I agree with that. And it's funny. When I was thinking about this, I forgot about the movie theater arcades, which is kind of calling them arcades. It's generous.
There are arcade games in an area of the movie theater, right?
Yeah, and so I think I probably similarly the movie theater that was closest to us had a couple of games. Time Crisis was a big one that was super fun to play.
For sure.
I have maybe a little bit more familiarity with arcades, but not in the traditional sense of like what arcades were and what we'll talk about here in a second. So my usage, we'll say, of arcades. So my dad's an over-the-road truck driver, and when I would go on trips with him, one of the things that good truck stops would be like an arcade section. Yeah, in fact, I think the truck stop nearest us growing up had some games.
Because I lived I grew up right by Carmel Church.
Yeah.
So I guess but it wasn't like a full arcade though. I think it was just like a couple of them or like a Pac-Man or something like that, which, and I wasn't hanging out in truck stops. So I guess it's not really the same case. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so when we would go to that one my family would go there to eat dinner sometimes. And like every now and again, my parents would let us have a couple extra bucks to go play. Right.
Sure.
But truly when I would go on some trips with my dad, it was always, does this truck stop have an arcade? Let me check it out. And, if I, while we were waiting there overnight, like I would just be able to go play a couple of games. So he was a very big, and still is, like he plays like the claw machines, like religiously, and would come back just with like stuffed animals, like all over the place. When I was growing up, I always gravitated towards kind of like, honestly, whatever was there, because there truly wasn't a ton of options necessarily. Like it was very similar to like the Carmel Church experience, where it was like maybe there was a couple games if you were lucky. But I think that things that typically were there were like Cruisin' USA, the racing arcade games.
Yeah, I remember that.
Pac-Man if they had it. I went through a phase. I don't remember if we've ever talked about this, but I went through a phase where. And I say a phase, it was like literally 2 weeks probably in high school where if I find a Pac-Man machine, I need to try to play it and beat the high score. I don't know why.
That's fine. I mean, I don't know. That sounds like a teenager thing. Like that totally makes sense.
Yeah. Maybe like a teenager in like the 80s, but
but if I ever were to pick an arcade game, it usually would be Pac-Man, honestly. So
that is true. And it is that kind of like classic arcade game style. But and then the only other one would be like every now and again, I think there would be fighting games and things like that. So like a Virtua Fighter, maybe even like Mortal Kombat would sneak in there too. But yeah, I will say that we missed probably the biggest popularity spike of arcades, right? It goes well before our time.
We did, but I think we also just lived in an area where like even if we grew up maybe like 5 to 10 years earlier when it was when it was a bigger boom, we still wouldn't have had any near where we were because we were out in the middle of nowhere.
That's true. That's very true. And I think that's a part of an interesting history too, because one of the things as I was doing research on arcades that I found was at a certain point in time, and I'll talk about this in a second, there was like a huge proliferation of arcades and this was mostly in like big cities and stuff like that, where you would have, like 5 or 6, near each other. But like, we didn't grow up in a big city. So like, we didn't have that experience. and I think even if we had, we still may not have had that experience, because by the time we were kind of like coming of age, there was that second wave around the time we would have been like, I don't know, 9 or 10. But I feel like that's still like a little young for when we would have even been going out and doing that. So we still pretty much missed the boat. But again, we talked about barcades a little bit. They're kind of coming back. So maybe we can ride that wave a little bit.
Sure. But
speaking of, I think, like I said, I wanted to talk a little bit about the history of arcades.
In the two-dimensional world of video dots and dashes, flat blips and formless blobs.
This token can unlock a fantasy you'll never forget. In a galaxy far, far away.
Pizza power! Spice and season.
Of this token, you can travel the universe. You are needed as a rebel pilot. Become one. Race that ran free. Or play for the New York Yankees. With this token, you can live a dream.
Watch me cut my web. Watch yourself fall! Stop the bombs in time. If I don't get you, my diagnosis will. Holy cow! You're running out of time!
You can live out your fantasies in the game room. A cup of tokens can provide you with hours of fun and excitement. Live out your fantasies.
It's a really fascinating situation of what has happened and what they were. And when I say the history of, I'm mostly focusing on here in like the United States. Obviously, in places like Japan and things like that, the history is a lot different.
Yeah.
And I think arcades are even still a little popular today, although I still think they've fallen off, today. But mostly just, the United States. There's a lot here. And none of it specifically deals with the Simpsons Arcade Game. So I'm just going to preface that up front. We will be talking about the game, but I do think there's a lot of interesting stuff here. So I'm just going to dive into some of the details that I found. And for this kind of portion, I found a couple of different sources. But the one that I highlighted the most is an incredible article by Laura June for The Verge. It was published in 2013, so it's a little old, or a little bit older. And it's titled For Amusement Only, The Life and Death of the American Arcade. And I really recommend people, if you're like interested in reading more about this, go check that out. It's like 8,000 words, and it's kind of a history of the highs and lows and ultimately the death of the classic arcade or the American arcade. So to kick things off, penny arcades. Do you know what a penny arcade is by chance?
I know the webcomic.
Yeah. That was my like researching penny arcades was difficult.
Probably really hard.
Yeah. Right. That was what kept popping up. But that was my kind of familiarity with them too. So
they
were
the ones who did They did the Lost one. Or that penny arcade? I get them all confused.
I don't honestly remember.
I was never a big webcomic reader, so
I don't even think penny arcade. Yeah, and I don't think penny arcade was that good from what well, maybe, I don't know. I'm just kind of talking out of my ass here. I don't honestly remember.
Yep, they did do Lost, so okay.
Well, yeah, there you go.
Some level of staying power,
Yeah,
will persist for a very long time. Anyway, sorry, that tangent on a tangent. Maybe steer away from that.
So penny arcades, where the name for the webcomic actually comes from, were kind of the predecessors of what we would consider modern arcades. They featured rudimentary coin-operated machines in the early 20th century, and they were, in quotes, entertainment arcades. And they would feature things like fortune-telling machines, slot machines, and even the love testing machine that Grandpa Simpson gets trapped in the spin-off Spectacular.
So good.
Yeah, and while those do carry the amusement arcade DNA, they're pretty much far removed from the types of arcades you and I and most of our listeners would be used to. And to get to that point, we have to fast forward a little bit to 1931, a scant 8 years prior to the start of World War II, when coin-operated machines at the time were largely just like slot and gumball machines, right? Like that's like, and again, that's kind of like the penny arcades, and then you have these other kind of coin-operated machines. And at that time, Gottlieb and Company, this is the name of the company, that created what we recognize as the first pinball machine.
Nice. Okay.
And I have a picture.
Literal pins in it. That's incredible.
Right?
That's incredible.
It's a pinball machine. So what we're looking at in our show notes is this like kind of tabletop device. You might have seen something like this before because funny enough, I think I mean, they've made like replicas and stuff like this of this before, but there's also like these little games that we used to get that were like these little plastic games that had water in it, and you would just shoot like a ball.
Yeah.
And you would try to get it into a specific hole. And that's exactly what like the first pinball machines were.
Nice. Yeah, that's so funny.
And yeah, they look nothing like what we remember pinball or know pinball machines to be today. And because they like didn't have bumpers, some of them offered cash payouts, which is kind of fun, but that's actually what led to a huge debate and eventually the banning of pinball machines in a bunch of places.
Gambling. Yeah.
So I'm going to quote from that article that I just mentioned. This is that Laura June article. And it says, from the beginning, pinball machines were a subject of municipal debate revolving around one main question: whether or not pinball machines were, quote, games of chance, which by definition meant that they were gambling devices. The article goes on to talk about the first bans of pinball machines, noting that New York City put a ban on pinball machines that lasted from, and this was wild to learn, 1942 to 1976.
Oh, but I guess that's why then there was a boom after in like the late 70s, early 80s then, because they've like were able to suddenly come back out of nowhere. That's really fascinating. I did not know that.
And what's really interesting, so a couple of things. So there's the one thing that was really fascinating to me about that was, so they're banned, obviously, but they still exist.
Right.
So they end up in like kind of more seedier places. That becomes a problem for them as well, because there were attacks on pinball and its association with mob efforts, and there were like concerns that like children, since it was a children's game, it was attempting to lure children into criminal dens, right? Like,
okay, yeah, I guess so. I mean, seems kind of like a stretch, but
yeah. This was the other thing that I thought was around the banning, the initial banning was. So again, quoting from that article, on the first day of the ban, the city police confiscated more than 2,000 pinball machines and issued 1,500 summons. A New York Times article of January 23rd, 1942, informed readers that the shiny trimmings of 2,000 machines had been stripped and sent off to the country's munition factories to contribute to the war effort.
That's the worst thing I have ever heard in my life. That is that's so depressing, but that is like so America. Like,
yeah,
like, oh, here's this convention just for the sake of like, you know, people actually like living their lives and enjoying themselves. No, we got to go to fucking war. Actually,
let's make bullets out of it.
Let's make bullets out of it.
I mean, it was World War II, so like, you know, one of the ones that like we, you know, whatever. We won't get into that.
Come to the Simpsons Arcade podcast to hear about World War II and munitions factories.
Listen, any chance I can get to be. Nah, I won't go down that road. It's too early in the podcast to go down that road. So, but I do think it is funny that like they were like, we've done you a service. We've taken the shiny metal pinballs and turned them into bullets. Like literally is what that article said. So, and again, we're not here purely to talk about pinball, but like I said, this article is fascinating, especially during this era. And this kind of prohibition style crackdown was spread to like all gaming. So like they even mentioned like, you know, they said like women's bridge clubs and stuff like that were like looked at like suspiciously. And it led to a really interesting detail where they would put a sticker on pinball machines that said "for amusement only," and that we printed on them. And you can actually still see this today. I actually took a picture of one of the pinball machines when we went to the barcade that still says "for amusement only" on it.
Yeah,
and literally, it's just saying like people aren't gambling with this, which, I mean, they still could, I guess, if they wanted to.
Yeah,
but.
And technically gambling is also amusement in a way, so, you know.
Yeah. Right?
But that's really interesting.
Yeah, the other thing that was kind of cool was that this also led to the creation of separate monetary exchanges, like tokens. They made tokens for machines and things like that, which it's kind of fun because like when you think about like Chuck E. Cheese or like, you know, any places you go like that, you always have to put money in to get tokens to play at the arcade.
Right.
And I always thought that was just, and it probably is part of the reason, that was just to like make you spend extra money, right? Like you have to break a bill, but you get like something out of the machine a lot of the times that you can't spend anywhere else.
Yeah. And that's probably, I mean, that's probably why they still do it now.
Yeah.
And never stopped it, but it's interesting to learn sort of the origin of it, that it was tied up in this sort of just making sure that it avoided the gambling aspect of it.
Yep. And of course, like with all things rad and dope, there's even more puritanical pushback against it, with some folks calling pinball a tool of the devil.
Yeah, of course.
And yeah, of course. And there was a manufactured fear of youth corruption. And like I mentioned earlier, this led to them trying to lock pinball behind closed doors, which of course only then added to the allure of these machines in places. There was even a there was a Better Home and Garden article that warned parents to protect their children from these various horrors. Like they talked about like not letting your children be zombified by pinball and shit. And it's like, what are we talking about? Like, what are we doing?
And yet that's like every time there's a new thing that children like, it's somehow a tool of the devil or zombification or youth corruption.
Yep.
Or whatever. So, yeah, very funny that Better Home and Garden was sort of like, we got to throw our hat in for this.
What the fuck are you doing? Like, get out of here. Like, go. Like, you have nothing to do with this. But one thing that was kind of funny, though, was Laura June in that same article talks about how it became the height of coolness to be pictured next to a pinball machine. And honestly, I kind of still fucking agree with that.
Sure.
I mean,
yeah.
You take a picture next to a pinball machine leaning on it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really
cool.
Sexy, honestly. I'm into that.
Yeah. It wasn't until the 1970s that bans on pinball machines were lifted. Funny enough, it took the Supreme Court of California intervening in 1974 and the New York City Council in 1976 to bring them back to those respective places. And after an absence of over 30 years, the machines were back, baby. But they weren't alone. Yeah. So one thing that's really funny too, and again, we're finally getting out of the pinball era, but there was, I can't remember the guy's name. There was in order to prove that pinball machines weren't just a game of chance, which at this point in time, they progressed past just kind of you pull a plunger and a ball goes somewhere.
Right.
And they had like the flippers and stuff. There was, I think I'm getting that right. Yeah. There was a gentleman who was in like a pinball association or something who played pinball for the Supreme Court or the Supreme Court of California in order to prove that. And he basically was like, Babe Ruth is able to like call his shot in baseball and I'm going to do the same thing, and like called where he wanted the ball to go and like was able to make it go there. Right.
Right.
And then he like in an interview later on, I think kind of said like he was either joking about it or this actually was true. He was like, yeah, I kind of just got lucky that happened.
But even still, that's so interesting though, because it feels like it's the exact same conversation with like legitimacy of like game competitions and esports, right? Like now you are seeing that treated with, I mean, I feel like it's just universally like college campuses have their esports teams officially and no one complains about it, but it's sort of like it takes like the proving of like, no, this is a thing that you can be skilled in just like you would be for any like physical sport. And it's just funny that it's like, again, the same patterns, the same conversation happening over and over and over again throughout history.
Yep.
It's so annoying.
It really is. And unfortunately, we're not even done with kind of the, arcades or games or, this stuff is like ruining our youth, because more of that's going to happen. Spoiler.
Yeah, sure.
So around this time, Nolan Bushnell and Ted Dabney kind of enter the game. Computer Space, this becomes the first arcade cabinet, and it was released in 1971 by the company, and I'm not making this up, the company was named Nutting Associates.
Stop. Nutting Associates and Bushnell and Dabney?
I know.
Come on.
I know. Right?
Come on.
I don't know what they were thinking. I mean, it was a different time, I guess.
And it was their names, but
Yeah.
I mean, Nutting and Bush was very much, people knew what that was in the 70s. Like that's not a new invention. Come on, y'all.
Yeah. What's funny is they make an even worse named company after this.
Oh, Jesus.
Not because of like sexual innuendo, but just because it's just a terrible name.
Cool.
So they make a game called Computer Space. It was inspired by a different game called Space War that was a computer game generated at MIT. And that's actually credited as like one of the most influential video games ever made. I'd never heard of it, but it's a very rudimentary game, but it's said to have inspired so many arcade games and so many early video games.
Cool.
And also, I put a picture of this ad in, Derek. Look at that fucking cabinet
That
for
looks
Computer Space.
sick, dude.
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
It's like this sleek, sexy, like, I don't know.
Yeah,
I want one of them.
The solid color and the sort of curves of it. It is like, I mean, I understand why they have like a sexy lady standing next to it, because it's sort of like, yeah, it's like got the curves of a woman basically, which is really. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of things that you could say about that and a lot of interesting analysis you can make about that, but. On the outset, in a very like retro futurism way, it looks very cool.
Yeah, are you saying that Nutting Associates made a sexy computer cabinet?
Yeah.
But anyway, after that, the Computer Space didn't actually do that well. They end up leaving that first company, and then they went on to form another company. And again, this is like the worst name I've ever read. It's Syzygy.
Yeah, I mean.
Syzygy.
That is a real word that exists. It just means that it's not a good thing to name your company though, because most people aren't necessarily going to know that. It's an astronomy word. It's like when something is in like when the planets are aligned, they're in syzygy. It's just sort of like things have to be aligned, I think is essentially what it means. I just know that word because it's been mentioned in other sci-fi shows, and there's an episode of X-Files called Syzygy. But yeah, you wouldn't name your company that, because your average layperson isn't going to know what that is, because it's a collection of consonants. So it's a weird name for a company. I agree with you.
I will back off a little bit on my my criticism of it there, especially knowing that it's a real word. I probably should have Googled that. But I'm not going to spend too much time here, other than to note that it's here where arcade cabinets really started to pick up. In 1974, there were something like 15 different companies making different cabinets. It wasn't, though, until the late 70s, early 80s when the heavy hitters really started making their way to arcades. And this was fascinating to me. In the span of 4 years, some of the most definitive arcade titles released were made in just the span of 4 years, including Space Invaders, Asteroids, Defender, Pac-Man, Centipede, and Donkey Kong.
God damn, what a just collection of bangers, man.
Right? Man, they were just cranking out.
Kind of nailed it right out of the gate, really.
Yeah. I mean, truly. Except for Computer Space, which apparently wasn't that great. But but I will say, though, this is also kind of the era when arcades really started to hit they were at their height.
Jerry, video games are the latest craze to sweep the country and most of the world, too. Millions of people are addicted to hours of gazing at electronic images on game screens in arcades and in their own homes. What makes video games so popular? Well, we search for an answer as we begin a special series on Video Fever, games people play.
It is a cacophony of sounds from a symphony of electronics. If you're filling your time capsules these days, don't forget a bit of Frogger, or Mousetrap, or Grand Champion, or Pac-Man, or Ms. Pac-Man. They are video games. They are as American, as international as war. We've got that too. In 1981, Americans popped in between $5 and $9 billion worth of quarters and tokens into the slots of arcade video games. Pac-Man alone digested $200 million for its manufacturer, Bally Corporation's Midway. No human could begin to compute how many Pac-Man dots were gobbled up, how many little children and adults spent their free time at the joystick of a video game control. One study estimates that we spent 75,000 man-years doing this. Don't despair those numbers. Before video games, there were other attractions.
Again, that same article that I've been citing before, it cited a Time report that noted in 1982, the most popular arcade cabinets were pulling in upwards of $400 in quarters a week. I adjusted that for inflation on my own in 2023, and that's $1,263 a week, which is a lot of money from one arcade cabinet.
Yeah. Wow.
Especially in quarters. Over a year. I mean,
yeah. How heavy that must that that pile of quarters had to be. How do you even take that to the bank?
Yeah. and when you think about it too, over the span of a year, if you're bringing in $400 a week, obviously it's going to fluctuate, but you're talking about I think it was something like $60,000 a year from one arcade cabinet.
That's incredible. Wow.
that's when the business really starts booming and everyone was really looking to, quote, get in on the game, not to have a bad game pun.
I mean, but it's, that's for real, though.
And that's exactly what they did. And it's honestly what eventually leads to the downfall of like the classic arcade places. There was such a proliferation in areas that they just became saturated with arcades. And the public distrust actually never really fully subsided. There were articles that claimed vandalism and drug use increased in areas where there were arcade, even though there was like no evidence of it, right?
Of course
like,
they're going to say that, yeah. I mean, it's no different than video games promote violence or encourage violence or whatever. Like, it's all the same conversation.
And there's one quote, and we talked about this a little bit ago too, and there's one quote that I did just want to call out from this article that I think it was really striking to me. And it says, it's shocking, of course, to realize that, quote, the golden age of video game arcades lasted just a few short years. But if we tie it onto the turbulent history of pinball, we're looking at a much longer institutional part of the culture in the 1980s that began to pass away. Like roller skating rinks and other public spaces, my cat just walked right in front of my outline. Like roller skating rinks and other public spaces that were, quote, for people only, our culture seems... for young people only.
An important word to not omit.
Like roller skating rinks and other public spaces for young people only, our culture seems to have decided that kids are better off when they're not alone with other kids.
That was like a cursed sentence. Something in the universe did not want you to get that out.
I know. It like really did. But that's exactly
that's interesting though. That's a conversation again.
Yeah.
Not to bring this up, like that's a conversation again, like that you have today now. That it's like there's just increasingly fewer and fewer places for young people to just hang out that are like communal spaces because everybody just looks at kids hanging out together as like loitering or whatever. And any places like an arcade is usually made only for adults now, like barcades, and it's encouraging drinking, and in some cases don't want kids to be in those spaces. Or just those spaces just go away in general. So like that's always a weird thing that exists, that our culture just seems to just not want kids to
have
really
fun.
Have fun. Yeah.
Yeah. It's sad. And it I think, again, this isn't specifically tied to the Simpsons arcade game, but I mean, even the Simpsons show, right, had a lot of criticisms and for its like moral failings, about what it was doing to the culture.
There is absolutely, especially during the time that this game came out, like the moral panic around The Simpsons was so, absurd. Like when you look back on it and then watch the episodes that were airing at the time that are so incredibly tame compared to anything that you would see just a few years later, that it's just like the most stereotypical sitcom really in some ways, in terms of like the morality of the show, right? It's just that, oh no, Bart said damn, and it's a cartoon and there's like kind of the anti-authoritarian streak, right? But
it showed poor people or like middle class people,
right? And like that was enough to just like have people just. I mean, how many stories are there of kids, especially kids our age, who were like, I wasn't allowed to watch The Simpsons as a kid. My parents didn't let me, and which is like absurd to think about when you then hear about the things that they were allowed to watch that were way worse than The Simpsons were. It's all the same thing. Anytime there is anything that seems to be just slightly a little bit on the edge and seems to slightly that seems to like have some sort of like slight representation for any level of like counterculture or anti-authority in even like the most barest way, like it's just treated like the devil. It's so silly.
Yeah. Well, and also too, it's like, ascribing like even anti-authoritarianism to, not that you did that, but like, I think that was like, part of it, like ascribing it to arcades is so weird because it's like, they're not like really in their own way. Like, but it's because the authority figures saw something that they didn't like about them, and so they ascribed that kind of value to it.
The idea of kids independently hanging out on their own with their friends and then playing games where like stuff shoots at other stuff and there's like a modicum of violence in it, for some people that is enough to be considered like counterculture in the worst possible way.
Yep. And again, I mean, we're almost basically done with the history of arcades because it's pretty much a quick death, and then there's kind of like a last gasp that happens. But the late 80s saw a collapse of the industry because of a lot of the reasons we just talked about. But in the early 90s, the era where that's where the era where we're going to be talking about, like that's where the Simpsons game is released, there was a renaissance, and it was due mostly because of fighting games. So the Simpsons game is classified as a beat 'em up, but I think it kind of falls into a very similar category, as there's a lot of these style of beat 'em ups that are released around this time as well, in addition to, you know, the one game that they really point at as being like reviving arcades with Street Fighter 2. And that was released the same year as the Simpsons Arcade Game, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. But of course, because it's fighting games, it led to more moral outrage, which you kind of alluded to earlier. And then there were Senate hearings. This is where I believe it's Joe Lieberman Senate hearings, where the ESRB ratings were created. It was all about the nature of like violent video games.
I know that one place parents want us to draw the line is with violence in video games. The fact is that a new generation of video games crosses that line, containing the most horrible depictions of graphic violence and sex, including particularly violence against women. Like the Grinch who stole Christmas, these violent video games threaten to rob this particular holiday season of a spirit of goodwill.
And then in the end, fighting games weren't able to save the industry and was just kind of there as like a final last gasp. And today, where we're at today, the most popular form of arcade, we've already talked about it, is kind of barcade. And that's where we went to drink a little bit and play the Simpsons Arcade Game. But what's interesting is that those places aren't driven off of like having the best or newest cabinets or anything like that. They're driven off of just, you know, getting people in and drinking beer. Like that's where their money is made, right? Like the barcades that we go to are usually like all the games are set to like free play, right? Like, so like you're not spending money in the arcade, you're spending money on like food and drink.
Oh yeah.
So, and so, I mean, that's pretty much the history. It's I wouldn't say it's a sad history necessarily, because it's a, you know, it was a thing that existed in the time that it was there, and it's not really there anymore. In fact, one of the last thing I'll mention about that article is that they said that to even calculate the number of arcades today, you have to kind of stretch the definition, include things like Dave and Buster's and stuff like that in the calculation, which are but also aren't, like, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
they just don't exist in that traditional sense anymore.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, I don't think that a traditional arcade would thrive anymore. I mean, for nothing else, people just don't carry around coins anyway. So like, you know,
for sure.
like I think the evolution. I do think that. Yeah, I wouldn't call it like a sad history or anything of it, because I do think that it's pretty universally looked upon fondly. Like if you're somebody who likes video games or not, I feel like the idea of arcades is sort of like, oh yeah, that's cool. And if you see one, it's sort of like, oh, that's so retro. That's really neat. You know, whether even if you don't act like, you don't have to be a gamer to think arcades are cool. And I think that speaks to how, I don't know, how regardless of the weird pushback that the concept got, like it's the idea of it has persisted. You know, I think everybody likes the idea of being able to just play video games with your friends in a cool space with bright lights and loud music, you know?
Yeah. Yep. Well, I think that's pretty much it for that absolutely necessary history. So let's actually jump in and talk about the game itself.
Yes.
starting with the genre, because, you know, for any of our listeners, if you haven't played the game before, the Simpsons Arcade Game is what's defined as a classic beat 'em up, which I would say is a side-scrolling action / fighting game where the player or players face hordes of enemy as opposed to a 1v1 style fighting game. And you'll often have like your progression blocked at certain spots, either forcing you to take out a number of different enemies or a boss in order to proceed. The other thing that's kind of a staple of this genre is you're kind of given the opportunity to interact with the environment, either by picking up weapons or power-ups, breaking things, or sometimes discovering secret areas. And most give kind of and it's hard to kind of describe this in an audio format, but like a horizontal and like vertical plane on which to traverse, but they're not like 3-dimensional, right? Like it's a 3-dimensional plane in a sense, but like it's a 2D, like top down kind of experience.
You're basically just going up and down and left and right, but like the way that the sort of the way that it's designed, like it looks like there's a horizon at the end of it. So it looks like if you're going up, you're going farther back, but it's almost like an optical illusion just from how things are, you know, how things are actually designed.
Yeah. It is something that I think is, when I think of like arcades, I like that is one of the genres that like quickly pops into my mind is that kind of game, because like it is something that you don't really see in other formats. Like they still make these type of games, but they're usually like, when they refer to them in like a sense of like, this is a traditional like arcade beat 'em up. Like it even has arcade in like the title a lot of the time. So did you have any of these games that like you were fond of or anything when you were growing up?
I was never a beat 'em up person. I think part of it was because, you know, like I said, I didn't really go to arcades, and the couple of consoles that I did have, we didn't have arcade. We had, you know, we had like a Mario game and like Double Dribble and stuff like that. Yeah. So like, I think because I didn't have like those sort of early imprinting of beat 'em ups when I was a kid, and then by the time I got older and would like choose games on my own, you know, I feel like I just didn't have an affinity for them. And I do think they very quickly sort of became a little bit archaic in a lot of ways, you know? I think that they're really cool, and I like playing them in an arcade environment now, but it's more for the environment rather than the game itself.
For sure.
I guess the most fun that I ever had with one was I did play the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers on SNES one. I didn't own it, but I had a friend who owned it, and I could play it there. And then, you know, later in life, I would revisit it with emulators and stuff. But and I do like that one, but that has more to do with it being a Power Rangers game than a beat 'em up, you know.
Yeah.
And same with like I played like I think. I forget if Maximum Carnage or Separation Anxiety came first, but one of those two Spider-Man games, I played a little bit of them, and it's the same deal. It's sort of like, it's cool that this is Spider-Man and you can play as Venom, but if it wasn't a beat 'em up and it was a different type of game, I wouldn't be mad about it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I actually didn't even see like the Power Rangers one when I was like looking up like some of the.
I think it's more of a side-scrolling action game.
I mean,
I think
the genre is, I don't even know if it's officially a genre, but like everybody talks about it like that. So I mean, the definition is loose. It sounds like it probably is. Like
that's
it would
the
fall into that
closest
category.
thing. The closest thing to a beat 'em up for me that I really have affinity for. But really, none of the other ones, even ones that I recognize and know I played, like I don't care. It's like, cool, I'll play it if it's an arcade, but other than that, I don't really, you know.
I will say the newest. So there, some of the more popular ones, there was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game, and then Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Turtles in Time. They actually made a sequel called Shredder's Revenge just like 2 or 3 years ago.
I've heard that one's really, really good.
That game is so good. Like they do it in such a way that like elevates the genre, and it doesn't feel like it's just like a rehash of like a classic arcade game, and it's actually fun to play today.
I have played some like current games that are made in the style of an old beat 'em up, and I do enjoy those.
Yeah.
I think that when there's like quality of life improvements for like the casual normies like me, I can enjoy it. I think it's just, you know, the old ones, they're
rough.
hard. They're really rough and they're
sometimes.
really hard. Yeah.
Well, and they're designed to be that. So yeah, I mean, I think some of the notable examples of this genre are things like Final Fight, the Streets of Rage series, which I love. Streets of Rage 2, I remember playing that on, I think, Sega Genesis. And there's Eddie, who's this like roller skating kid who, man, that was the best. Double Dragons. I mentioned the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles games. There was also Batman, X-Men, Spider-Man, and then some others. And like I said, it's pretty safe to say they're definitive of like arcade games. And one of the other things that I think is interesting is that, and it's possibly just because of the time period in which they were popular, but they, for some reason, lend themselves to licensed products and tie-ins. So we already mentioned like a bunch of like tie-in ones, but there were even tie-in beat-em-up games for Sailor Moon called Pretty Soldier Sailor Moon in 1995, and then Alien versus Predator in 1994, which I didn't know was a thing.
I don't think I knew that game existed, but I'm not surprised because every supplemental, like every comic and stuff was Alien versus Predator, like of that franchise. Like they were trying to get those two to clash for a very, very, very long time.
No idea. I mean, it makes sense, like when you mention it, but I thought that was just like a more recent phenomenon.
Yeah, that's so funny.
Of course, in terms of the development, the Simpsons Arcade Game predates those last two that we just talked about, releasing in March of 1991 in the US and August of 91 in Japan. It was directed by Kengo Nakamura, who worked on Contra, Super Contra, and Gradius 3.
Okay.
And then Dan Castellaneta, Julie Kavner, Nancy Cartwright, and Yardley Smith all lent their voices to the project as well. Hank Azaria and Harry Shearer did not.
I'm not surprised about Harry Shearer not wanting to fuck with a stupid arcade game.
The game came on the heels of the very popular TNMT arcade game, which was released in 1989 and then debuted the same month as its sequel, Turtles in Time. Both Turtle games and the Simpsons games were developed by the same company, Konami. In fact, many side-scrolling beat-em-up game was developed by Konami, and they also had their hands in developing a number of tie-in games, other tie-in games as well, including The Goonies in 1986.
I did play that game. I liked that game a lot. Yeah.
Oh, that was like a platformer, I think, right?
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Aliens in 1990. Did you play that one?
No, I did not.
Okay. And then X-Men, which was another side-scroller beat-em-up, and G.I. Joe in 1992. Do you have any like Konami games that you know of that you're like a fan of, or any titles that you like?
I would probably have to look up a whole list of them because I'm sure I do.
I mean, they're I can go through a couple of them, but like they're known for a ton of stuff. Like
right, that's the problem is that I know that they're known for a ton, so I know that I definitely do. I mean, I do like some of the Castlevania games that I have played. I think Castlevania is really good. I'm saying Castlevania is really good. Did you guys know that? Hot take.
I'd never heard of it. Yeah, I'm just kidding.
That's the first thing that I think of when I think of Konami, but I'm sure that there are others.
Yeah,
too.
I mean, like I said, they're responsible for so much. You mentioned Castlevania, Contra. They did the Metal Gear series, and they're also behind a ton of beat-centric arcade games, including Dance Dance Revolution, Beatmania, and then two games, Guitar Freaks and Drum Mania, which are kind of like the predecessors of Guitar Hero and Rock Band.
Gotcha.
They've been in the arcade business for a long time, and I say have because they still kind of are. They've released arcade games every year in the 2020s so far, although in 2023 they only released one, and I think it was like a Beatmania sequel or something like that.
Interesting.
Again, most of those I think are in... I mean, a lot of them make their way to the United States, but a lot of them are in Japan, is where they're pretty popular.
Oh, God, yeah. I'm just scrolling through their list of stuff, and it's like Dance Dance Revolution, Dance Dance Revolution, Dance Dance Revolution, Dance Dance Revolution. All right.
Yeah, it's Konami, man. They just make so much stuff. They even make the Yu-Gi-Oh card game, like the actual card game, not like the digital versions of it. They make the actual cards.
Yeah.
They also developed Bart's House of Weirdness, which is a game that we will talk about later on. So I have a little bit more of an opportunity to dip back in and talk about the company then as well. And then one other thing, I mentioned this earlier that was interesting. This released just a month after Street Fighter 2, which again was heralded as like the fighting games that kickstarted the short-lived revival. And one of the things, so this is just me conjecturing, they give a lot of attention to Street Fighter 2, right? Of like being like, there's this revival in arcade games at the time. But we also have, the Simpsons Arcade Game, which is released really quickly after it. In terms of sales, the Simpsons Arcade Game came in like it was either tied for second or third that year. I don't know how it really breaks down or how they got the numbers, but it was basically Street Fighter 2 and then Neo Geo MVS and then The Simpsons were like right there, like beside each other. So like, I don't know. I think that there's an argument that could be made that like, because of like The Simpsons and The Simpsons gaining popularity at the time, which we'll talk about in a second,
right?
Maybe that it had a little bit of help getting like people back in arcades too.
The Simpsons, Australia's most popular cartoon series, is now a fun-packed new video game for the whole family. Play The Simpsons at Time Zone and at any places where you see this sign. Ask for The Simpsons at your favourite video games location. If they don't have it yet, tell them to call Leisure and Allied on this number for trade inquiries. They'll have a cow, man.
Well, sure, because I feel like I think that makes sense because I feel like you get some crossover stuff, right? Like
yeah.
Street Fighter 2 and The Simpsons are both sort of like, I think were crossover hits, but like in different ways, you know? Like Street Fighter 2 was like, if you like fighting games and arcade games, there you go. And it was just like a well-made beat 'em up game, you know?
Yeah.
But then Simpsons Arcade, like, because it did have the brand power of The Simpsons, like, and I do think that there is something to you being able to play the whole Simpsons family. I think that it probably encouraged like girls to also play along with the boys, which Street Fighter maybe wasn't necessarily targeted. Plenty of girls played Street Fighter too, but it wasn't targeted as much. And Simpsons, I feel like weirdly has more like universal appeal, I think. And I think also because it's not like an edgy game either, people that maybe would be steered away from like the big muscly dudes fighting each other in Street Fighter 2 would be maybe more attracted to the cartoony stuff in the Simpsons Arcade Game, even though they're both games about like fighting and violence technically.
I think that's all like totally valid. And I mean, I think that the look at specifically fighting games is probably because of the number of fighting games that come out thereafter. And they're probably, in comparison, I think that fighting game arcade cabinets do better than the beat 'em ups. But
yeah,
I do think that having these popular tie-in games, and not even just The Simpsons, but like other things like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and stuff like that, like that's going to get kids to want to play it, like period.
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
Street Fighter 2 probably gets like some hardcore folks who are going to come and spend more time in the arcade there.
Right.
But like if I'm a kid at the time and I'm like, I want to go play an arcade game and I see The Simpsons and the Turtles, like hell yeah, that's the place I'm going first.
Yeah, and actually, you know, co-op versus a fighting game too. I think that makes it, and I think having those at the same time, like kind of having options. If you want to fight someone else and be competitive, you can. If you want to like play with your siblings and friends alongside them and help each other, you can do that too in two very popular games. I think that makes a lot of sense.
And so that's pretty much like the genre, we'll say, in the development piece. I think we could talk a little bit about the show at the time now as well, because I think that's an important component. We've kind of started to get into this a little bit.
Yeah.
Kind of an important component. You know, at the time when this was released, the show was firmly in its second season. And this is a really kind of, this is a pivotal season, which is weird to say because this includes a number of notable episodes, including the first Treehouse of Horror and Bart Gets an F. The latter, according to Simpsons Wiki, had the most views for any Fox Network show for a few years and remains the highest episode of the show today. I'm assuming that's still true.
I think that's still true just because of how TV viewership is.
Yeah.
I don't think the show's never reached the heights that it had at that time.
Yeah, it even this was like put up against like the Cosby Show. Like I think that episode, Bart Gets an F, was put up against the Cosby Show for like the first time.
Because is that when they moved to Thursdays?
If the Simpsons Wiki is to be believed, but I mean,
believe you. I think that's probably right. I think that sounds right.
And they, it didn't win in terms of like Nielsen ratings, but in terms of raw viewership, apparently it did. So
sure.
Which is, you know, that was like huge.
Yeah, I mean, well, because Cosby Show was a colossal like behemoth at the time in TV. Like that was the whole joke that the Simpsons was like kind of their rival, and being like Cosby Show is, you know, was nice and teaching families how to, live correctly and morally, and the Simpsons was like the immoral, were the immoral ones with the Bart swearing and being bad. But you know what? Guess which one won out in history at the end of the day?
And the Simpsons never went to prison.
Well,
actually,
no,
okay. I guess they probably did at some point.
But no, in real life, nobody went to prison.
So it's really early on, right?
Yeah,
in the life cycle of the show. There were roughly, and this was a calculation I did, 84 characters that have been introduced in the show at this time, which sounds like a lot, but like when you think of like the number of characters in The Simpsons proper, like isn't. So like it's still pretty early on in terms of like the number of characters, and it probably was far fewer than that when the game was actually being developed. And I thought it'd be interesting to keep an eye on this kind of number as we go through, because one of the things when we were playing the game, it was just like random dudes, right? Like Simpsons family and then random dudes.
Well, and I think too, like, it's roughly 84 characters, but a lot of characters in the first season of the show are like these weird ones that never appear again, right? Like, do you remember The Simpsons had like the old lady neighbor? I don't even remember what her name was. It starts with a W, Winterfield or something, or Whitfield, something like that. Like characters like that were poised to be recurring characters in the first season that just like never took off. Or Marvin Monroe is like a more famous example, but like that's an example too, right? It's like, here's a major character, never mind, we don't like them, they're never going to appear again unless we make a joke about how they never appeared again. So they're working with even fewer, because this was probably being developed more like in the first season, and they're working with even fewer than that comparatively now, because because a lot of these characters didn't hit it off, and there's some characters that are in this game that like don't actually matter in the future, know? Or you have Sideshow Bob and his like original character design,
and he's an ally.
He's just an ally. So it's like the Simpsons sort of the mythology of the Simpsons, I guess, if you will. The world of it really explodes like by the time the third season rolls around. But this game, obviously, it makes sense to be pumped out during the height of its popularity. It's like you want to catch the wave before the wave calms down. But as a result, it like becomes this interesting time capsule of a very brief period of the show before the whole world of Springfield like really exploded, And
honestly, even before like the main characters really fall into like their characterizations, you know what I mean? Like, they're very, I don't want to say one dimensional at this time, because I do think they're still pretty fleshed out, but like they have like more like, I don't know, the world sees them as more one-dimensional. I'll say that. Like, it's kind of like, oh, Bart's like the, don't have a cowman kid, and you know what I mean? Like, it's more of like the world sees them with their like catchphrases and stuff, but they become much more than that, I think, later on. Yeah, so anything else that you would add about this period of time for The Simpsons? I mean, again, we talked about it. It's like super early on, but anything that strikes you for this time period?
I think that it is still really funny when you play this game and then you watch the show at the time, and the show in the first season, especially, and early in the second season, was so grounded still. Like I think that they were making the game before Treehouse of Horror actually had actually come out, and that this game has such bizarre science fiction, horror, fantasy stuff thrown into it, and it makes sense. It's an arcade game. Like, what are you gonna do? But that's what's so funny about taking like what at the time was essentially just a regular sitcom that was animated, like edgier than your average sitcom and smarter than your average sitcom, but still at the end of the day, just like about a low class family like doing regular stuff. The show hadn't gotten wacky or weird yet. And so, but then it's like, oh, now you have to make an action beat 'em up arcade game. Like, what the hell are you supposed to do with that? So of course they fight zombies and ghosts and dream bowling balls and shit. Like, and Mr. Burns and a giant robot, which are things that would make sense for a Simpsons game would come out a few years later, because then you'd be like, oh, you're referencing Treehouse of Horror. Oh, sure, I guess Mr. Burns has a robot because we have robots in the Simpsons universe.
Yeah, why not?
But definitely not at the beginning of season 2. That stuff was fucking wild and weird. So I do wish I could put myself in a place of only having seen like the first season of the show and then playing this game, and how weird it would have felt to play this game after just the first season of the show.
That's a good call out too, because I'm just sitting here thinking like, what if, the Bundys like were just put into an arcade game like this,
Right. It would
like,
be the same thing.
The same thing.
Yeah. I mean, that show also was a little bit cartoony and stuff, but it's like, there weren't like aliens and stuff regularly and Married with Children.
Yeah.
But if you put them in a game, they probably would fight aliens or some shit, Like I think that's kind of par the course for tie-in games, but it just makes it really funny given the history of The Simpsons that it would evolve to a point where some of the stuff in this game would make sense and appear in the show later. It was just happening at the time where the show wasn't actually there yet.
It's interesting because all that said, like it would be, I wouldn't be surprised if people like hated the game, you know what I mean, when it came out, because it felt different, but apparently it was it was popular, right? Like we talked about how popular it was in terms of sales. It also had fairly popular reviews. I mean, there weren't a ton of reviews that I could really find, but the ones that I found were pretty positive. And then the other ones I found were more like retro reviews of folks reviewing the game later on. And then again, when it was released on PlayStation Network and Xbox Live, people looking at it for that. Mm-hmm. But generally, I think initially the game got pretty positive reviews. I did find this one review from a magazine called Sinclair User that I just wanted to just read, because it's kind of a very funny way that they talk about it. But they say, to start off with, you choose the character out of the family that you want to play, and here's the only bad news. If playing with friends, only one of you can take the part of Bart, blading the baddies over the head with a skateboard. Others must choose from Dad, in parentheses, Homer, who has a bowling ball as his chosen weapon. Marge, in parentheses, Mum, with a vacuum cleaner, or Lisa, parentheses, sister, who can do extraordinary things with a skipping rope.
Okay, first of all, I have to take issue with the fact that the parentheticals don't line up.
I know.
Dad, in parentheses, Homer, but then Marge, in parentheses, Mum. Like,
I don't know.
Are you like? I understand if they're naming them and then in parentheses it's sort of like, and this is who they are in the family, but like why they're acting like Homer's name is Dad and his position.
I don't
in the family
understand that.
I think they just needed a copy editor, really, is what it was.
Yeah.
It is very funny though. I mean, to be fair, that it is kind of that's what the game the game is. They're not really wrong about that.
The other thing that's funny about the parentheticals is like, again, how early on it is at the time of The Simpsons. They have to explain who those characters are, except Bart. They don't have to explain who Bart is.
Because everyone
knows who Bart is,
Yeah.
So I think that is just kind of a really interesting time capsule of like how people were looking at it. It is also funny. Do you remember what the kids, when we were at the barcade, told us before we started playing the game?
Oh yeah. They're like, Bart's the best character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's still to this day, but to be fair, they were accurate, because the game that we played had a lot of issues.
Yeah.
And
it
Bart,
needed some maintenance for sure.
Really did. Bart and Marge were the only two characters that worked.
Yeah, the only ones that worked correct. Yeah, Homer and Lisa, you could play them, but like the joysticks would get stuck, so they wouldn't be able to fully move all the way up. Marge, by the end of it though, I was struggling with some of the movement with Marge. Like that game was really kind of on its last legs.
Oh,
if
yeah.
they don't do some maintenance soon on that.
Oh,
on that cabinet.
I think it was the Lisa stick was like just completely busted. Like it was gone. So I mean, I think that's as good a time as any to get into what we thought as we were playing the game. So. Sure. Like we said, we played the game as it was intended to be played, drinking beers in a modern barcade, and then having to maneuver those two extra characters because their joysticks were broken and our friends didn't want to play them.
Oh, our friends would play them briefly, and then it's sort of like, fuck this, and then left.
I don't blame them.
And we played the entire game.
Yeah.
It only took like an hour, right? Like it wasn't that long.
I don't even think it took us that long. It was probably like 30,
45 minutes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my hand was really hurting when I did that, though. It was very sore. But it is like, I mean, it is that is the exact right environment to play it. I don't think that I would ever play the Simpsons arcade game like at home one night. Like I don't think it's, and I'm sure there are people who do that, and I'm more power to you, but like I feel like a beat 'em up like this, like the ideal situation is you're playing it on a big cabinet, you're standing up, you're having a beer or some delightful beverage, and can barely hear the music and are surrounded by other loud people, like that is sort of the ideal, because it is kind of a fever dream. And it's like, weirdly, it's like, in some ways the game isn't very fun in the same way that any beat 'em up like isn't very fun. It's frustrating, but it's a very satisfying when you get through everything.
Oh, it totally is. Here's the only thing I will say. So I mean, on our episode 0, I talked a little bit about how I like certain like challenging games, and like this is a challenging game. We had the luxury of playing it with like unlimited lives.
Oh my God.
Which,
yeah.
One, I don't think I would have wanted to do it without that at this point in time.
No,
but
God,
it
no.
also,
I hate that.
It also made me like it less. To be totally honest, because like I just knew that like all it was going to take, like it was just an amount of time. Like an amount of time had to pass and we were going to get through everything. And there's something about that just like didn't really connect with me. There was no gravity to the situation. Like I didn't have to worry about like putting in more quarters or like anything like that. And so I think that there is a little bit of a disservice to playing it in that way. Now I'm not saying like, we need to go back to the quarter eating days, but like I think some of the re-releases have done different things with like how you do continues and stuff like that.
Sure.
I don't know too much about them because we're looking purely at like the arcade game as like a time capsule.
Yeah.
But I think that's just my thought, is like I felt a little bit like let down in a weird way because of that.
I think that makes sense, because it is just sort of like, it's just sort of like, oh, okay, like you die a million times and there's no downside to it.
Yeah.
And honestly, for us, we couldn't take a break, because it's not like it's not like you could be like, oh, you died, let's go. Like I couldn't stop and get another beer. We had to just play the entire hour.
Yeah.
Nonstop if someone else couldn't get us something, So like, there is something weird about it. And like, to be fair, we're going there with intentionally to play it for the podcast. And we wanted to make sure that we got through the whole thing. Mm-hmm. So, and normally if you're going to an arcade, as soon as you get bored, you just bounce and go to another game, which, and so I think that kind of solves the problem, but it is sort of a no-win situation, right? Because it's like, I don't think nowadays we're built to be able to just put quarters in continuously. Yeah. I don't think anybody has the mental fortitude for that. I guess unless it's like digitally on a phone, quote unquote freemium game on your phone. That's kind of what the quarters system is. But in this way, where it's so obvious, like physically putting a quarter in because it told you to continue with a quarter, like, no, I don't think people just can't do that anymore.
For sure.
But it does sort of take away, because the whole game is built around the idea that it is supposed to be a huge challenge to make as much money as possible, and that you do have to struggle to stay alive, and are literally paying to keep playing the game if you really want to commit to beating it. And the commitment is sort of lost when you are free to play. So it's never going to be the same, but it is still cool that like you have the opportunity to experience it, because I'd never beaten the game before like that, because I never put enough quarters into an arcade when I played it before, when I was younger. If I ever encountered it, I would never commit to that. So it was satisfying for me to actually beat the game beginning to end for once in my life, even though I was basically assisted by the free to play aspect of it. But
and like there's nothing inherently wrong with that like aspect of it. Like again, I agree with you. Like it is good to have that, because I don't think I ever beat the game prior to just having it set to free play. I think it was a similar situation. The only time I had beaten it prior to this was at another barcade like a couple of years ago, when it was actually for like a work event, when like a bunch of us were just like, and people were rotating in and out. Like it was kind of fun because that experience was fun. Not to say that when we played it, it wasn't fun, but like it was a really cool thing, because like there was like 6 or 7 of us, and eventually we got to the end, and like everybody was like gathered around to see the end, because everybody had the same experience of like, oh, I played this when I was younger, but like I never like saw the end of it, and so collectively we got to the end of it. So there is a like, again, I fully agree with you. I am glad that I have gotten to see the end of it. I do just wonder if there's like a different way that you could do like the continues or something. I don't know, to make it like not feel as much like if you give me any amount of time, I'll crack this nut like eventually.
I don't know. Yeah, it might not be a solvable problem, unfortunately, just because of the way time moves, really.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that we did it, though. It was a really cool experience going to an arcade with that level of intentionality.
100%. Like it was. I mean, for the listener, we get to the barcade and we were like, you and me were like on a mission.
Yeah, because here's the thing. We were already out with friends for Fred's birthday. That was what you call it, Meatpocalypse or whatever. Texas Day Brazil beforehand. And then it was just like already out, and like everybody else is just out just to have fun. But we're sort of like, well, if we're already
job to do,
if we're already going to be out and going to a barcade, yeah, we've got a fucking job to do. So yeah, we were there on a mission. And of course, as soon as we get there, like we find the Simpsons game and there are children playing it for the first like half hour that we were there.
Which I will say, there's something kind of heartening about that. Like, in a sense, because it was like, I mean, I actually think it makes sense that they gravitated towards that game. It's colorful.
People still know what the Simpsons
is,
are. Even if they've never watched an episode of it, which is entirely possible, just from pop culture and merchandise and stuff and advertising, they know these characters in the same way that any of us know of Mickey Mouse and Superman.
Yeah, I just think that was very fun. That was like, there were multiple empty machines, but there was just like a crowd of like 5 kids just like are at that machine, just like literally tearing it up. Like,
and I think that they had beaten it too. Like they beat it right before. Like that's why they left, is because they beat it, and then that let us play it.
And so we had to like scope it out to try and get it from them as soon as they finished it, and that's what we did. And that's when we discovered that only 2 of the characters were working. Cool. But I think the other thing that would have been better about our experience was, because of the way the free play was set up, and I guess someone had just put a bunch of continues in, all the characters were there. Like you couldn't just play as just 2 characters in the way that we played it. All 4 of them were there. So like we had to maneuver every single character throughout every level.
It was, I will say, that was fun for the sake of the podcast though, because you get to sort of play with and see
that's true
every character's sort of motion and how they worked and everything, and the tag team abilities that they would have with each other and stuff.
And that was a really fun thing that this game did that I don't know I've seen in other beat 'em ups where, and it probably does exist. I don't know the genre well enough, but like, what you're talking about, the team ups, like every Simpsons character could team up with another Simpsons character and have like a different sort of special move, which I thought was kind of cool. Like that was a really interesting thought that they brought to it.
Yeah. Like Homer and Marge like would just sort of hug each other and then roll around in their weird little sex ball, like knocking villains away. It's very weird. Homer would just throw Lisa. Like I fucking love
that. Lisa and Bart would just hold hands and run like across the screen.
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever saw Lisa and Marge.
I don't remember what they do.
But I know that Homer would hold Bart, and then you could just like whack people with the skateboard while he was holding him.
Yeah, it's a really fun sort of dynamic that they added to that I don't know that I remember like knew about until this time.
Yeah, I don't know that I did either. Also, that reviewer that said Homer's weapon of choice was a bowling ball. Isn't the bowling ball a pickup? I don't remember him actually having a weapon. It was just his fist, right? Or do you pull it out like a different...
Oh, shit. No, I don't remember, actually. I don't remember if he picks it up or not. But his main attack is his fist,
Yeah.
Maybe he brings it out as like a special or something.
Maybe. I don't remember if we ever saw his special or any of their specials.
Because we were mostly playing Marge and Bart the whole time.
Yeah.
So.
We can run quickly through like what all the stages were. We don't have to like spend time talking about each individual one if we don't want to, but just highlighting anything that's interesting.
Yeah. Before we do that, can you talk about like sort of just the general opening of this game?
Oh,
like,
yeah. Great call.
So, okay, I love that. I think it's so cool that there's the original opening credits to the show or in the game, and then they use that because every character is highlighted in the opening credits. They use that as an opportunity to like do a little like shot of who each character is with like information about them, and it's funny to see like what persists and then what's different now. For one, Bart's in his blue shirt in this game. It's like the classic weird marketing of like blue shirt Bart from this era. It's so funny to see him in this blue shirt in this game. And his stuff is really normal. It's like his hobby is instigating disobedience. Yeah, sure. But everyone else is really interesting for one way or another. Homer, for one, age 35, Doesn't that make you feel fucking weird? And that was kind of, I mean, I think that's not in the show at the time. I think he was 36. And then they would continually age him up like periodically during the show. But still pretty close. His alias is Homeboy and Home Dude, which I thought was really funny.
Home Dude.
Lisa's age flat out wrong because she's 7 and she's like never been 7 in the show. She's always been 8. But her catchphrase, embrace nothingness.
I love that so much. And actually, it's funny. For whatever reason, Twitter had been giving me like subliminal marketing or something because I got like a weird Twitter account that just shared that picture out like a week or so ago, like unprompted or something. And it was just like, I was like, oh, that's right. That is her like catchphrase in the game. Yeah. Why is that what it says? But also I kind of want a t-shirt with it.
I kind of love it. Yeah, I love it. Yeah. And then last but not least, Marge, if you want to feel really weird, her age is 34. And that is, I mean, that first season of the show, there's a whole episode about her 34th birthday. So shout out to everyone who's older than Marge Simpson. Where's your 3 kids, including your 10-year-old and your 2-story house and 2 cars.
Oh my God.
But yeah, and her alias is Mom. I love that. But yeah, I mean, I just, all that stuff is really fun. And it is like, you know, again, it's like, if you are a new viewer or a kid who was banned from watching the show because of the moral panic, but made your way to an arcade, here's your introduction to The Simpsons. And
it's not that inaccurate, I guess.
Most of it's fine. Yeah, most of it works.
And I do love the I guess it's not technically chip tunes, but like that 64-bit or whatever musical score that they have for the opening music as well. Like
it's so good.
It's so good. And that is one thing I found too, was how complimentary a lot of reviewers at the time were of kind of like the graphics and how it looked, because I mean, it's rough, but it does look just like the show.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, it's rough in the same way that any beat 'em up is, but I think that like the thing is, The Simpsons art style kind of really lends itself to this sort of this time period and type of arcade game, because, so, you know, I mean, we played the X-Men game while we were at the barcade, for example, and like you can barely fucking tell what's going on half the time in that game.
So bad.
It's just like a mess of colors. You can only, like, the character designs are as good as they could be, but like even then it's sort of like, I can't really tell what what this face is, you know?
Yep.
With The Simpsons, because they're already so simplistic and kind of big and blocky and so bright and colorful, like it is so easy to make them look distinct in your sort of, I don't know, 1632-bit. I don't know what the difference in the bits. Whatever bit level this is, it is so easy to make them look distinct and stand out on the TV. And like, I think, the opening sequence, it looks like just the arcade version of the show. And even when you're playing, it's a lot easier to tell characters apart when you're playing it than pretty much any other beat 'em up I've ever played.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because one thing that I think I didn't even really think about. So arcades, there was a point in time when like arcades, I think, were still, and I might be getting this wrong, but I think arcades were like more powerful than like home consoles, you know, for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And
I believe it.
Which makes sense, right? It's like a whole standalone kind of board.
Sure.
And so, you know, it's entirely possible too that like in comparison to like home games at the time, like seeing this, it's like, oh wow, this is crazy. I mean, like, look at this screenshot of Marge that's like in the show notes. Like it, like, you know, she just looks great. Like it looks just like it. So
absolutely.
But yeah, I really loved we talked about the colors and just how it looks a lot. I love the aesthetic of this game, like through and through. That's like my favorite part about it.
I agree. I mean, you know, The Simpsons color palette is like so like bright and pastel, you know, in a lot of ways. So, and the game really nails that color palette. So many pinks and bright greens and stuff.
Yeah, and like the blues and stuff, like, it all just like pops. Even like when it doesn't work all the way, it still looks cool. Like, you know what I mean?
It's a really visually very good looking game.
Yeah, and it stands up. It stands up even to this day. So, so in terms of the stages, jumping into those, so I'll just read them really quickly, and then we can kind of jump back and forth. But the first stage is downtown. Then we go to Krusty Land. The cemetery, stage 3 is the cemetery, and I put elevator ?
Yeah, why there's an elevator in the cemetery? Sure, okay.
And then it's Moe's Tavern, which
The biggest
tavern,
the biggest hole in the wall bar I have ever seen in my life. It's just a colossal mall, basically.
Yep. And then there's this Springfield Butte. I think it's a Butte, Butte.
I call it Springfield Butt.
The Springfield Butt. And this was the point where I think I had the first. I think we're getting cloose to the end. I said that multiple times.
Oh yeah,
probably said that a little bit earlier.
It's like,
actually.
yeah, I think there's only one stage left, and then there's like 3 more stages.
Yep. Dreamland, which is a fun one. The Channel 6 station, and then finally the Springfield nuclear power plant. But it's really just like 2 rooms in the power plant.
Yeah, and the whole reason they're going through all of these extremely iconic Springfield spots that are visited in every episode of the show is just because they're chasing Smithers, who's kidnapped Maggie. And the reason that Smithers kidnapped Maggie, because that's weird enough already.
Yeah.
The reason he kidnapped Maggie is because he was robbing a jewelry store, steals a diamond with cartoon bombs.
Yep.
And then when he bumps into the Simpsons family or just passing by, the diamond just ends up in Maggie's mouth. And Smithers kidnaps her because I guess he can't get the diamond out of Maggie's
just take
mouth.
the diamond. Like,
I guess because she's sucking on it so hard, you know.
Maybe.
Sorry, I didn't mean to say it like that.
No, I know what you mean, but it's just kind of like, it's like, what?
I think that's the implication, is that he probably just can't remove it because she's her whole pacifier thing, right? So I think that's the explanation. But it is just so funny because it's so clear that's what makes it so clear that like this was before even the Krusty Gets Busted was even written. I feel like or they weren't informed of what scripts were in production, right? Because like why
would they?
Why right? Like why would this be Mr. Smithers and Burns? Well, if they're the only sort of villainous characters you've really ever met, other than what, like the babysitter bandit or something, like and I guess that aired after Krusty Gets Busted, so that would actually also line up. There really have never been like truly villainous characters that aren't just like school bullies yet in the show, other than Homer's boss, who aren't like villains at that point in the show, but like they're the most bad guys, but they can't have a story about like them firing Homer or something. So they just have to make them more classical supervillains, right? So like, I understand the logic of how they get there. And then it's like, I don't know, he robs a jewelry store, I guess. Like, it makes no sense in the context of how we know these characters, why Smithers would be robbing a jewelry store at all. Last person to do that. But I kind of get how they get there based on the options that they have, if they want to have a pre-existing Simpsons character be the main bad guy, like, but only from the limited pool that they could possibly pull from.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the other option, and we'll see this, I think, with some of the upcoming games, is they could have just created new threats, right? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the one of the next games is Bart versus the Space Mutants, right? Like, so that's when you get into the realm of like, okay, now we're pulling from outside of the show. Is that going to draw in people? Is that going to be well
kind of, but Space Mutants was a movie in the universe of the show already, so they're still pulling from something. Like,
true.
I see how you get there from that, right? But to your point, it's like, as it would go along, there's like more opportunities to try different things. This is the first attempt, but I do think like for a beat 'em up, like you have to have someone that's a villain. Like you do have to make your villain a person. And I understand why they don't want to create someone wholesale, because you want this to represent the show in some way. You want the characters to be recognizable, right?
Yeah. Except a lot of the characters really aren't recognizable, right?
That's true.
So
that's true.
It is funny that stage 1 is one of the few bosses with a named character boss. So the first boss in stage 1 is Professor Werner von Braun, who first appears in Bart the Daredevil, which is season 2, episode 8. So we know they at least have knowledge up to that point, right? Or at least they kind of maybe they got like a character design or something, right?
Yeah, but I mean that kind of deflates my theory, because I just would have assumed that this was in development way earlier. But I guess Simpsons because it's animation, like their actual cycle for production cycle is so early in advance. So you're right. Maybe like they had some scripts to work off of or something like that.
Or not even scripts, maybe like, and I will say there wasn't a lot of information that I could find in terms of like how the game was actually developed. I just don't know if anybody really took any of that information down. If I'm wrong about that and any listener has that, send it to me because I would love to know more about it. But like, it's possible they just got like animation cells or something from the company.
And this is a Japanese company, right? So like, and I think it was mostly Japanese people that were working on it in Konami. So like, it also is a matter of like what stuff was sent to them that was actually translated for them. Did they have a translator on staff that could have been reading scripts or whatever? Or like, are there episodes that maybe future episodes had aired at this point, but like, or had aired in America, but not in Japan yet. So that hadn't been dubbed yet. And so it's sort of like, well, we can see visually, but we don't actually really know exactly what's going on. Like that's also possible too. Now that I think about it, I am so curious about the timeline though, because this being a season 2 character completely throws off the way that I've been thinking this entire time. Because I've been thinking squarely that they were solely working off season 1 stuff. But now I'm so curious of like the production timeline of when this went into development. Cause I don't really know how long it takes to make an arcade beat 'em up in this time period. I can't imagine it takes that long compared to, you know, the years of production games take now.
Yeah. And again, I wish, I wish I had that information because like, and I'm sure it's out there somewhere, but like I couldn't find it in my searches, but
it would explain a lot. But
I have to imagine it probably wasn't that long of a time frame, right? Like, cause if you think about it, Konami was like cranking these out. Like, I mean, they truly were like, and there were other like folks working on like other games. Like, it wasn't just like, you know, a handful of people. Like, they had a lot of different folks with their hands in each of these, but the fact that they were like cranking them out like so quick together has me believe like it probably wasn't that long. You know, they probably also had like an engine that this ran off of that was like used in like some of their other games and stuff like that too, that they were able to just like pretty quickly like, you know, reskin or something like that and then make a bunch of changes. So
makes sense.
But yeah, so that boss is named. We also have the boss of the second stage is just a crusty balloon.
Sure.
And then in the crypt elevator, there's 2 goons. There is a drunk man as a boss in Moe's Cavern. A bear is the boss in the Butte.
I mean, I think a bear had appeared in the show at that point, so that makes sense.
Yep. Yep. There's a character. There's a named character. There's a anthropomorphic bowling ball from Dreamland, which fine. That makes sense too, because they're in Dreamland. A robot in Channel 6's first half, and then a Kabuki warrior in the second half.
What a fucking weird pull.
I don't know.
Truly don't understand.
I don't know. And then, of course, Waylon Smithers and Mr. Burns as the final bosses at the end of the game. But yeah, I think the rest of them were grunt unnamed enemies. I saw them listed as like goon and then firefighter. But one thing I noticed was that Wikipedia had a caption that mentioned Rupert and Royd as the two of the goon characters.
I saw your note and I did some digging and I don't have a great answer for you, but I think I do have an answer potentially. I have an answer and a potential answer that I think is more likely. And then I have like a secondary answer as well. So I actually, I don't see anywhere else on the internet, at least based on Google searches, which are increasingly less and less reliable these days, given how the internet is built. So take it all with a grain of salt, obviously, but
given how it's being destroyed,
But like, yeah, I mean, like stuff like Simpsons Wiki or, you know, places that you would expect lists of enemies to be listed under trivia or whatever, even if it's like stupid stuff, like it's only listed in this weird Wikipedia caption. So I did look up like the history of the Wikipedia article itself, like the editing history. So the first time Rupert and Royd are added to this Wikipedia page are in May 2008 by an unnamed user that only made edits on May 6, 2008 to it's like a few video game Wikipedia pages at the time. And what that person, and so, you know, it might mean that they just only ever made edits in it and never made edit on Wikipedia again, or maybe they made an account later or something like that. But either way, when they edited that page in 2008, they basically added a whole section of the enemies section that listed all of the enemies in the game and descriptions and gave them all names. So the henchmen are named Roy, Stan, Clovis, and Victor. The fat guys are named Rupert, according to this. However, this Wikipedia user didn't list any sources, which I think kind of makes sense because back in 2008, that was like somewhat early days for Wikipedia. There's much better outsourcing now. But as time goes on, that page just sort of gets progressively more edited and cleaned up. And, generally Wikipedia doesn't go to have full breakdowns like that anymore. That's usually more about the meta of the game, right? Like how it exists in the world and production. They don't just list lists of henchmen because we have fan wikis for that.
Yeah.
So what I think maybe happened is that I think that maybe this person just made up some names for the enemy themselves or heard rumors potentially like that were just from otherwise, because nothing is sourced. And then as things sort of got progressively edited over time and things started getting sourced better, that information was just already there because it was on the page for such a long time originally that that ends up being like whoever's editing the page. Like it's like that. It's almost like a game of telephone in a way, where it's just sort of like some of the information, pieces of that information just sort of continue to exist, even when there wasn't really an original source, to the point that the original source was just the Wikipedia page. But just from people not paying attention or not going back and really trying to look at where that originally came from, it's just sort of like, oh yeah, I see at one point we listed Rupert and Roy as names of the enemies. That's what this is an image of, so we'll put that on the caption. But I think that it seems like the origin might have just been from that Wikipedia page.
That's fascinating.
The alternative explanation that I might have, though, is that that person might have gotten them from something that existed, and maybe it was sort of like, maybe some marketing or guide that was in an old magazine. And because, like I said, the internet's being fucking destroyed, and Google puts more precedence on like sponsored pages and things that make more money essentially. It's probably harder and harder for those things to come up in searches, or maybe would never come up in searches at all if it's something that wasn't like uploaded to Internet Archived or scanned or something like that. So it might just be information from an old magazine or something like that like maybe someone listening remembers and has or read back in 91, but that is just like not easily findable for people like us.
If you can confirm Rupert and Royd, we'll have you on the show. I don't know. maybe we will. Yeah. I don't know. But that's fascinating. Maybe as you were saying that, I was like, what if it was like someone who worked on the game and knew that that's just what they called them? And
that would be cool.
And that's why
really cool.
They didn't have like a source for it because they were just like, it was me. Like I made Rupert and Royd.
I could see that because who the types of people that would have been editing Wikipedia in 2008 would probably be the types of people that like worked on video games in the 90s. You know what I mean? Like it totally seems like the right kind of person to be doing that.
Yeah. And actually,
and they only edited video game pages. So maybe it was someone who worked on all of these video games like Violent Storm, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, and Lazy Town.
Oh, interesting.
Maybe not. Those are not really in the same arena at all, but sure.
I also was curious. I was looking when the game made its way to like PS3 and Xbox Live Arcade,
and maybe they added names or something.
I was like, yeah, but I still feel like that would have actually been easier to have found. But I don't see anything like initially about it. Looks like it was 2012 is when I see this article. So anyway, so fascinating. Yeah, I would love to know where that came. That's good sleuthing there, Derek. Jeez. So that solves that mystery a little bit at least. But yeah, otherwise all the characters are pretty much unnamed. And yeah, even like I said, even like the henchmen, there's just like firefighter, and Krusty Lookalike is the only other one that is like kind of close to. Yeah. You do see some characters. There's some cameos that show up in the game. Barney is in Moe's bar, or Moe's Tavern rather, and I think there was one other cameo that showed up, but like.
There's a few, like Otto and Marvin Monroe are somewhere on one of the streets. Patty and Selma show up
at the end. Yeah. And Grandpa.
Yeah, I think Principal Skinner is in the background at one point too. So like they have characters, they just like don't do anything. They're just in the background.
They're just there. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of just like fun Easter eggy nuggets in this game too. I mean, one of the things, you see in the first stage, you see advertisements for the arcade game itself, which is kind of fun. And then, like I said, you get that cameo, a little bit of the final boss. Once you get into Krusty Land, you get some, and you pointed these out, Derek, some of the rabbits, which were from the Life in Hell comics.
Yeah, like Binky is the name of the character in Life in Hell. And then you get attacked by the one-eared rabbit, which is, what is the name of that character? That is also a character from Bongo. Bongo is because that's what Bongo Comics is named after.
Oh.
Bongo Comics is what did the Simpsons comics and Futurama comics. That's the Matt Groening's line of comics, his publisher, named after Bongo, the one-eared rabbit who was in Life in Hell alongside Binky. So that's, your fun Matt Groening references. And obviously there was more Life in Hell kind of ties because that was like the thing he was famous for right before The Simpsons. And that was still very recent,
Yeah.
Or I guess it wasn't recent. I guess he started in like the 70s or something. But you know what I mean? That was the thing that he was most well known for in The Simpsons. It only just happened. So it makes sense that they were so tied together in the early days. And they have the reference to Marge having rabbit ears in this game, which like when she gets electrocuted or when the vacuum kind of pulls up her hair, like you see rabbit ears. And that was like a whole thing where there was this weird idea that Marge actually had rabbit ears under her hair and her hair was just a wig. And that would be like a funny, weird reveal that would happen, at some point in the show or the series finale, back when they didn't expect the show would run for 30 something years.
You know what? I would not be mad if in the actual show finale they still did that. Like that would be kind of funny. Like, you know what I mean?
Be kind
like
of funny.
Like so many years later, and like a lot of people would just be like, "What?"
Yeah, because it would only only like hardcore Simpsons people would like know what that was referring to. Yeah, which I mean there are plenty of them. So yeah, I don't know. But it's funny because again, this game is a time capsule. Like Simpsons games today aren't going to have like Life in Hell references and Marge with bunny ears in them. We should
see how far Life in Hell references persist. Like, is this the only one that we're going to get, or are we going to get more in like the next game we play, which I know what it is because I'm good at my job. I'm not quickly strolling to the end to figure out what it was. But like, you know what I mean? Like, are we going to get that again? Or
because I feel like Life in Hell references kind of stopped in the show proper, like pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't expect to see them, but who knows?
We do stick in like the 90s era pretty for a while, like with Simpsons games. So you never know. But was there anything in like the first early kind of stages, like stage 1 through 3, that you wanted to touch on, like in particular, or it's just kind of like you go through, you beat up goons, and that's basically it.
I'm a big fan of the wrestler's pants falling down. I think it's really funny.
And
showing off his tighty whitey. Tight pink briefs, actually.
I also love he has like an articulated muscle like on his arm, like he like flexes and like has like just a one round lump, which is great.
I do think the Krusty balloon is funny because there's like in season 7 there's the joke about the crust, like blowing up a Krusty balloon when they're searching for Krusty. They blow up the Krusty balloon and has like the big, the big face. And then it's, oh my God, I hate that when I blank on Simpsons reference.
Oh, me too. It's the worst, right?
But the Pete, Dancing Pete, right? Isn't that what his name? No, that's not what his name is. Hold on. I have to get this right. Handsome Pete.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's Handsome Pete. Yeah.
Yeah. But the reason that they bring out Handsome Pete is because of how his face is deformed and because of how the balloon looks, and that balloon kind of looks like the balloon in the arcade game.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, the balloon boss was odd, but
yeah.
And also, I'm trying to think of like what my least favorite boss was. Probably the bowling ball, which we'll talk about when we get to it. Although I like the concept of the boss, I just remember that being one where we were just like mashing buttons and being like, when is this going to be over?
Yeah.
Which was the experience I feel like with a lot of the bosses in this game, where it was just like you just wail on them for like upwards of like 5 minutes, and that's not even exaggerating. Like legitimately, like just hitting them constantly for them to go down.
Oh, I was gonna say, yeah, I agree with you. And I was gonna say before we get off the first 2 stages, I do think it is a genuinely like a good old school Simpsons joke that the cemetery is discount cemetery.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. I forgot about that. But when we saw it, like when we were playing it, no, that is a great, like, you're right. That is like definitely an early Simpsons joke.
It's good. It's very good. Yeah.
I will say one of the Easter eggs that was like on Simpsons Wiki was like when the zombies pop up, they do like a little bit of a dance, which might be like an homage to Michael Jackson's Thriller, which was
Shut up. Simpsons Wiki is really stupid sometimes. Like
I know,
really annoying sometimes.
That's why I've relied on it pretty sparingly, like in terms of looking and But
some of the just general information, it makes it easy to like remember like what characters were in episodes, but like trivia and references on that wiki site, y'all first of all, get a sense of humor, but anyway, it's and then the fact that we mentioned it, but the fact that the cemetery just leads into an elevator, like
so
was there
weird.
a level missing? I don't understand. But
I don't know what happened there. And I will say I don't know why I love an elevator stage and a beat 'em up. There's just something. There's just something about them that's just like fun. And you know exactly, and they're always there. They're just like a staple in that genre. I remember. I mentioned earlier Streets of Rage 3. I remember. I think it was 3. It was either 3 or 2, but. Because it had Eddie, but there was like a notorious to me, a very difficult like elevator stage that just like stuck with me. But I loved that level, and also there's elevator stages I think in like a lot of games at this time, just as a way to break up the monotony of side scrolling.
And it's probably easy to build that level too.
Yeah, for sure. That one was cool. I also I liked overall the design of the cemetery. That looked very like. The background of that looked very Simpson-y.
Absolutely, it looks like the opening of a treehouse of horror. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, it totally does.
Yep, and also the zombie designs reminded me of, and I'm gonna blank on the name of the character, but like do you know the old man character who like sings "Old Gray Mare" in The Simpsons at one point? It's a very random pull, but like.
Oh my God! Yes. Oh shit! What is his name? Actually, he doesn't have a name.
Oh, okay.
So don't feel bad. It's just old Jewish man.
Oh, okay. Well, they look like him. The zombies kind of look like him a little bit. I think
they do kind of. Yeah.
At least the dude zombies. But and then we get once you get to the end of the elevator, you get the goon fight or the two random dudes. I forget what they were referred to as, but just two goons. Which again, don't know who they are. One of them's wearing a bigger suit. I don't know what the deal was. It almost
looks like it's like a child in an adult sized suit is what it looks like. Like I don't really understand what the
I don't know.
idea was there.
That was another annoying boss fight, I will say. I didn't like that one very much. I can't really point to why, but that one was just not as fun. When you get into Moe's Tavern, though, that was a cool moment because you do see Barney pretty immediately, which is kind of fun. And I can't remember if he has a line because, again, it was hard for us to hear anything. But he is like kind of interactable. Like you can kind of hit him, I think, a little bit. And then he'll like get up and like walk away. And then the bar just goes on like forever.
It's funny because like visually there's bits of like there's a bit I think where you see Moe and it does look like it's from the show. But I think isn't there like the love. No, there's like arcade games there.
There's arcade games. Machine. There are pool tables too. You do like there are pool tables that you can jump on and stuff.
Is that the one where the arcade games? It's like one of the arcade games is just the Simpsons game and it's Homer and Marge kissing for some reason, which is the thing they don't do in this game. And the other one is just an alien game, and it shows like I think kind of a space mutant basically. And then at the end it's Marge for some reason.
Yeah. So it's aliens, and one of the reasons, I think, is because Konami developed Aliens. Like that was another game they developed. Yeah. So
okay, that makes sense.
So they had that in there. But yeah, it was funny to see Marge as like the xenomorph or turn into the xenomorph.
So weird.
Yeah, that was a really weird call out. I also have a screenshot in here of the restrooms. Look at the restroom signs like above the doors.
Oh my God.
It's just like, what is going on with this?
Yeah, the man has like the biggest chest imaginable and tiny little legs, and the lady is like very wide.
She's just a triangle. Like, she's just a triangle.
That is so
and then
funny.
there's like a chef coming out of that door. Also, there are glass, like see-through doors. Like everything about that is just weird. Like it's just a strange setup for that bathroom. And then, of course, the boss in that level is just a drunk man.
Fair.
Which I didn't even know that was his thing, but yeah. After that, we make our way to the Springfield Butte, where you fight a bear, and there is a tree that you can interact with, which has another one of the, and I don't know anything about them, so you'll have to tell me which one it is. Another one of the Life in Hell rabbits living in the tree.
I don't remember which one it was.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
one of them.
They all look like rabbits, so
Yeah.
I'm not like a huge Life in Hell pool of knowledge. So
the bear as the boss at the Springfield Butte, you actually see escape earlier from Krusty Land, which is kind of fun. And then
but doesn't he turn out to be a guy in a suit at the end of it though? I'm pretty sure he does.
Oh yeah. Wait.
So it doesn't make sense.
I don't know. Yeah. But yeah, maybe he wanted to just live his life out in the woods as a bear. I don't know.
I mean, honestly,
listen,
I feel you, dude.
Yeah, and then you just get beat up by the Simpson family.
I know, he's just trying to live his life, and then they show up and invade his home and beat him. The Simpsons murder so many people in this game. Like this family of 4 kills so many people, and then basically try to kill a bear, which turns out to just be a dude just trying to live his life.
So they just kill another person. That leads into like the strange moment where they fall over the waterfall, I think, right? And then they all have a collective dream and they end up in Dreamland, which I'll just go ahead and say I think that's my favorite stage.
Sure. Well, the thing about the Dreamland stage is that it's kind of like every Simpsons reference and location that they didn't make as a regular stage, they just put in here.
Yeah. And it's also, you said this while we were playing it, but it is very strange that like the actual power plant isn't just like a playable stage. Like technically it is at the end of the game.
Mostly just Burns' office.
It's just Burns' office, yeah.
And I'm like, there's so many cool things you could have done with the power plant and like radioactive stuff and radioactive monsters or whatever. Like, I don't know. Or Springfield Elementary is like in the Dreamland, but you don't go through Springfield Elementary. Like it would have, I mean, the teacher characters and Skinner were all in season 1. I'm just really shocked, especially given Bartmania, like positioning them as like a villainous characters in this. Against Bart, like would have made sense.
I will say I could see them shying away from the elementary school because I could see the complaints being, and not that like this is I'm making this complaint, but like them saying like, well, you're encouraging like children to rebel against like principals and their teachers and stuff like that. But
okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And then also too, like you would have like children running around potentially. I don't disagree with you at all. I think that that makes more sense as a location than Dreamland. You know, like, and I actually think that would have been a fun location, all things considered. But I wonder if that's one of the reasons why they decided not to.
I can see that. Yeah. And you know, and I mean, you do get fun stuff with Dreamland because it's sort of like pretty much, I think there's something that sort of you could line up with every character.
Yeah.
Like Homer fighting stuff from the power plant, like fighting people in the power plant outfits, and bowling balls could be a Marge or Homer nightmare, depending on what it's referencing. You have saxophones for Lisa, like flying saxophones, and then Bart. I don't remember which half of Bart.
They were like the Bart Devils, like the Flying Devils. Yeah. But like, again, like as we were playing it, we were like analyzing it. We're like, who's this a dream for? And it was like the Bart Devils could have also been like someone else's dream potentially.
Yeah. They could have been Marge or Homer's, or at least actually, they could have been literally anyone else's dream.
I think I think you said this of like the saxophones might've been Homer, right? Like because Homer like complaining about the saxophone.
Yeah.
Bart the Devil could have been for Lisa.
Yeah.
But then it leaves like the bowling and like you can't line them all up. Like it's not.
No, you can't. And there's like just clouds that just look like Marge's head, I think, too, at one point. Like, I don't know who that's for. I mean, I think that they weren't thinking of it like whose dream is what. They're just thinking of general iconography of the family.
Yes.
That can be turned into weird villains. And I do appreciate that because it does make this whole level is so fucking weird. And it's a nice reprieve from just fighting people, which is the majority of what the game is.
It's also nice because, again, we talked a lot about how colorful this game is. It's black and white, like except for the characters and the enemies. Like which is a really interesting touch, and it makes it kind of pop a lot. Like, you know what I mean? Like I liked that whole aesthetic getting there.
Yeah.
Again, the final boss being the anthropomorphic bowling ball was a frustrating fight, but I thought it was a cool boss.
Yeah. Yeah,
So.
it's a cool boss idea, but it took a million years
Way
to beat
too
that
long.
thing.
And then we get to after that we get to was there anything else you wanted to mention about Dreamland?
Nah.
After that we get to Channel 6 for some reason, and Kent Brockman isn't the anchor, some random person. Channel 6 was weird. I didn't have much to really talk about, but
well, because I think that what they wanted to do with it was take advantage of it being a TV station, so you could do weird stuff, right? Because I think that's how they justify the kabuki person, I guess, is that there's some kabuki show that's being filmed. It's just, of all things, why would it be that?
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that they could have done more with that in the same way that they did a lot with Dreamland.
Mm-hmm.
They could have done more with the TV station if they wanted to have people in weird costumes fighting them. And I just think they just sort of don't really take advantage of the setting at all.
No, I totally agree. And I even when I was like redoing this, I was like, I forgot about the robot in that level too. I forgot about most of that level. It was honestly pretty forgettable. You do get a picture of Burns on the, apparently they're broadcasting something about him and the stolen diamond. I think he's being interviewed. And I don't really 100% know what was going on with that. The plot details are loose in this game, but
I wonder if it was like a weird insurance fraud situation. Like that was Burns's diamond that
maybe
the jeweler that he had like donated to the jeweler or something, or the jeweler was cleaning or holding, and then Smithers stole it for the insurance money or something. I don't know.
Interesting. Maybe that works. I like that. After that, we get to the final stage. This was the correct final stage call as we were playing. And it is first right outside of Burns' office, a fight with Smithers, who is dropping those cartoon bombs everywhere.
Of course.
And after that, it is a fight with Robot Burns, rather. And those were fine.
Yeah. Robot Burns kept going off screen all the time. Like, you just couldn't hit him. That was
everything about
annoying.
that fight was very annoying. Also, even worse than the anthropomorphic. This is when the game really is like, all right, we're getting to the end of the game. How do we get more quarters out of these kids? Because it was like,
oh my god,
the anthropomorphic bowling ball had this problem, but the Burns fight was like the worst of the worst, where it was like, I mean, it felt like it had like 6 stages, and I think it was really only like maybe 3. Where
I think so.
It was like, I think because he's walking around, and then you defeat the legs get blown off, and it has like the hovercraft, and then I think there's one after that where it just goes a little faster.
I think so.
Or maybe it wasn't a hovercraft, like a tank, whatever it was. But it felt like it just kept going on.
It was very long.
And I think I'm only partially joking about like that being like the time to like get quarters out of people, because like people know that's the end of the game, right? Like, so you just make that go on as long as you can. People die there, and it's like, well, no, I got to keep playing because I'm almost going to be done. And it's like, oh no, there's another like freaking 10 minutes of this boss. Like, I didn't realize.
If you want to be cynical about it, it's pretty mean and evil to do.
It is. And I do want to be mean about it because that sucked.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a cool concept. It was just like, I don't know. You don't need to have that high of like hit points.
Yeah,
like,
right. It was fine, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, at that point, it's like you are playing it to finish the game.
Yeah. And we had the luxury of just like our hands being sore from it. We just didn't have to spend like, $50 to beat it.
Yeah.
Actually, I was going to like keep track of how many times we died, but
that was impossible.
It would be impossible. That'd be a Herculean task.
Yeah, you would have had to have a third person just watching the game, making notes of that. Because, like, for each character, too. We were playing all 4 of them between the 2 of us. So.
Yep. Well, I mean, that's the end of the game. Are there any like final thoughts that you had about it?
A few spare notes. Bleeding Gums Murphy, I forgot he makes an appearance in that too, which is kind of a fun background pull for that.
He was in downtown, right? Like on, near the bridge, or
I think so, near where the Krusty people were.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Right. Because I think it's also where like close to where Marvin Monroe was too.
Yeah.
But he was in it, and actually, I want to correct myself a little bit for the super hardcore Simpsons people, because I referred to Sideshow Bob's original character design, and that's not within this game. His original character design, he has like a puffy kind of afro. This is really, I meant his pre-firing framing of Krusty character design, where he's in the Sideshow outfit. So it's not his original character design, but like an original character design for him.
You know, I knew that. I didn't want to correct you, but I 100% knew it the whole time. I'm joking.
Sure. I'm sure. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure we have general final thoughts, but like that's really all I had, like, of spare notes and stuff like that for it.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, final thoughts. Obviously, like, we'll be revisiting our kind of tier list at the end of this project, but since it is so fresh, I'm curious, do you still think this game deserves an S tier ranking at this point? And of course, obviously this is subject to change because it's kind of in comparison to the rest of the landscape, right? So like, it's hard to really know until we play the rest of the games, but after playing it again now, like, do you still feel as good about it as you did before?
Like, I think the thing that's weird about it is that it's, in a lot of ways, it's sort of incomparable to other games because it is an arcade beat 'em up game, and that is such a particular vibe, right? Like, I can't in good faith judge this by the same metrics as I would, like, you know, like how we'll judge Hit and Run, for example, right? Because this isn't, like I said, this isn't a game that I'm going to play at home on my own. This isn't a game that I'm playing for the narrative. It's a game that was built to be in an arcade for you to go to and spend quarters on, probably while you're just hanging out with your friends, as a kid, and now it exists as a place to, like, as an adult, for a burst of nostalgia, to hang out, drink some beers, and play for a little while till your hands hurt. Like, it's not meant to serve the same purpose as like a game you would play on your home console would. So it's not really, you can't really judge it in the same way. And I think by arcade game standards, and as someone who doesn't play a lot in arcades and doesn't really have a ton of affinity for beat 'em ups, like I said at the top, this is still like the only beat 'em up that I like can safely say that I do have an affinity for and enjoy playing, even when it's frustrating, and would definitely revisit, if not, flock to next time I'm at a barcade. Like, if I'm going to go to a barcade, The Simpsons is going to be on the list of things that I go to and play. Even if I don't intend to play the whole thing and finish it because my hand will hurt and it's hard. It is still really fun and visually striking. And I think, like, representative of the show in particular ways that I could have seen an arcade game not having been, if that was a really awkward way to word that.
No,
but
I know what you mean. It
visually, like, in terms of the feel, in a lot of ways, as much as like the lore isn't right and it doesn't really make sense in some ways, it still does feel like a Simpsons arcade game as I would expect it. And I don't really know. It could have been so much worse. And it hits all the right beats that I would need a Simpsons arcade game to beat, or to hit. So I think that I would still call it S tier for that reason.
Yeah. You know, I think I like what you just said there of it meets pretty much exactly. And it's a weird thing to say because, like, it is what I expect it to be because I've played it a lot before. Sure. But, like, it is pretty much what I would expect from a Simpsons arcade game, which is, I think, pretty much what you just said. Mm-hmm. Like, there isn't much more that I think you could really, like, get out of it, right? Like, what, like, we talked about some things that, like, could have been changed for the better, like adding some different locations and things like that to make it a better, like, quote, Simpsons game. Mm-hmm. But again, at the time that this was made, like, it wasn't like they had a ton of stuff to work off of. So, like, it does make sense, the things that we get and why it is so weird in some ways. And so I think that, like, it really hits it really hits the standard I would apply to it as well of like being a Simpsons arcade game. The other thing I would say is that I had kind of two competing thoughts, right? Like when we were talking about this kind of throughout this discussion. One is when we were talking about like, you know, whether or not I would like continue to put quarters in it, or like, you know, our friends who kind of like gave up when the arcade game was like busted up and, you know, and things like that. I would have done the same thing if I wasn't doing it for this podcast. Now, if I were to say like, okay, well, let's say it was on a perfect machine that was working fine, would I have still played through to beat it? And I think the answer is yes, because I did that once before. And so I don't think I will do that again unless there's someone who like is like, oh, I've never beaten this game and is like really excited about it. Then I'd be like, oh, hell yeah, let's go do it. But I also think about the fact that if I were to go into a barcade again, this is probably like one of the first games I would like look to find to see about playing.
It's like impossible to not like gravitate towards it.
I mean, and we didn't even really talk about like the design of the cabinet or anything like that.
Oh,
but like,
it's so straight. The bright blue and just having the bright Simpsons characters right front and center on them. Yeah, it's a beautiful looking cabinet that you can't miss when you go into an arcade.
And especially like when you think about like other machines that are next to it that are a lot of the times like there's other cool looking cabinets, don't get me wrong, but like this one like is striking because like there's a lot of like black and like red and things like that. And this is like not that. Like it's
bright
very cartoony.
Baby blue.
Bright baby blue. And yeah, it draws you in. And I think, you know, again, I'm not playing to beat this game again for a long time, but if I went to a barcade again and it was there, I would still probably play a little bit of it and then get bored of it and like, you know, go somewhere else.
And also, I don't know, I feel the same way about any beat 'em up game. Like I'm probably not gonna play any beat 'em up game to completion unless I'm like doing it for a project or something, you know? So
that's the next project, Derek, is the beat 'em up game podcast.
Yeah. You can choose someone else for that. You can find another host. I'm confident.
The beat 'em up guys. But yeah, I mean, I think overall, I think I'll have to see where I come down on this at the end when we redo our rankings, and we're not going to revisit our rankings every single time because I just thought this one made the most sense because we were both familiar with it and we were playing it again for the first time in a while.
Yeah.
And this is also the first time that we've done a record after, you know, having done that ranking. So, I do think I feel still positive about it overall.
Yeah, I do too. Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But I think that was a pretty exhaustive and hopefully not exhausting discussion of the arcade game. And hey, if you want to keep playing along with us, next month we'll be covering Bart versus the Space Mutants, the first home console release in the Simpsons gaming pantheon. I might also try to get a couple of streams in there for that one. I'm not promising anything, but if I do, I will be sure to mention it on our socials and anywhere that you might follow me to let folks know.
Nice. Yeah, that's really cool. That would be exciting if that happens.
Yeah, and that way people can kind of see what we're doing and share in my misery.
See how bad we are at these games.
And if our ideas are intriguing to you and you wish to subscribe to our newsletter, be sure to follow us on Instagram. We are at Simpsons Gaming Pod. You can also email us questions, corrections, or just Simpsons quotes you really like at simpsonsgaming@gmail.com. This podcast is a proud member of the Glitter Jaw. I do that every time. The Glitter Jaw Podcast Collective. If you're looking for other queer media podcasts, you can check out the full roster of Glitter Jaw shows at glitterjaw.com, including
my podcasts. Oh boy. So you can find, I do a podcast called Walloping Websnappers with my co-host Doug, where we do deep dives into every Spider-Man cartoon ever made. Also with Doug, I have another monthly podcast called Skreeonk, a Godzilla movie marathon, where we're stomping through Godzilla's filmography. And with my other co-host David, I have a show called Gimmicks, where we look at the high concept, experimental, and structure-breaking gimmicky episodes of television. You can find me, follow me on Twitter at Derek B. Gale, or on other platforms under that name, or Dare Bear, Mr. Dare Bear. Follow my Twitch at Mr. Dare Bear, where I will occasionally stream VHS recordings of old television airings. What about you, Tommy?
Yeah, I am at Awkward Comma on Twitter, and you can also listen to me on the podcast Distant Echoes, a Star Wars podcast, where my partner Cass and I watch each episode of every Star Wars TV series in whatever order we please. And we actually just had you on, Derek, to talk Genndy Tartakovsky's 2D Clone Wars series.
That was so fun.
It was a blast. Our incredible theme music was recorded by the band whose name you'd love to touch, but you mustn't touch. That's right, Max Power. Seriously, can't thank those dudes enough. Y'all rule. You can follow them on Instagram and Facebook at The Real Max Power Band. And remember, as always, tell your parents to listen to Lee Carvalho's potting challenge.
Or go to hell!
Yeah. Third time's the charm, baby.